The title of my preface is The Telltale Tingle, and the epigraph to it is as follows. A wise reader reads the book of genius, not with his heart, not so much with his brain, but with his spine. It is there that occurs the telltale tingle, even though we must keep a little aloof, a little detached while reading. And now the preface. Bypassing the plot, the symmetrical ploy of writing is the third and final volume of my The Séance of Reading project, whose unifying goal throughout has been to provoke in its readers the telltale tingle that Vladimir Nabokov recommends to his readers in his essay, Good Readers and Good Writers. Each installment of this project owes its origin to an inspired reading of a classic literary work that revealed within its pages the disguised return of a pre-literate practice from the ancestral past. So it's that play on classic literary work and pre-literate practice, if there is a play on those two terms. The inspiration for Volume 1, Ritual Unbound, which uncovers the disguised presence of a scapegoating ritual. The inspiration for that was the interpretation of Sophocles' Oedipus the King that René Girard authored in his Violence and the Sacred. Volume 2, The Séance of Reading on Building Rituals. The inspiration was Mircea Eliade's reading of the popular Romanian ballad, The Legend of Master Manole, very popular in Romania, unknown outside of Romania, it seems to me, which conjured, so a ballad though, which conjured the apparition of an archaic building ritual. It was Girard's interpretation of the legend, which this guy, the contractor Manole, has to bury his wife alive in a monastery that he's building in order that the walls don't continue collapsing. René Girard, rather unsurprisingly, I suppose, relates it to archaic building rituals, which I had never heard of, to be quite frank, before reading his book. Volume 3, Bypassing the Plot, was Cedric Whitman's classic study. I read it at Boston College back in the 1960s in my favorite class at Boston College, which was Greek Literature and Translation, and I reread it in preparation for this project. So Cedric Whitman, a fellow Rhode Islander, by the way, Cedric Whitman's classic study of the Iliad called Homer and the Heroic Tradition, from which I learned of what I have now designated and calling it the symmetrical ploy. It's a play on plot. The plot which is bypassed by the symmetrical ploy, which I learned of the symmetrical ploy adapted from geometrical vase painting that Homer himself used, rather than a completed plot to achieve closure in his epic poem. Just really briefly, in the Iliad, in case you're not aware of it already, you're hearing for the first time perhaps, that the books 1 and 24 of the Iliad correspond to the handles on a geometric vase, one mirroring the other. I was in Romania a couple of months ago at a university in Iași, up in the Northeast, giving a talk on The Great Gatsby and Mrs. Dalloway, which was the 100th anniversary of their publication. And suddenly the phrase came to me just like that. I don't know if it's inspired or what. The book ends by making bookends. The idea that at the end of the book is like the beginning of the book in the way that the bookend on the right is like the bookend on the left. I think it's a really interesting idea. Anyway, who am I to say? I have also pointed to the underlying unity of this project by writing a chapter on The Great Gatsby, because everyone knows The Great Gatsby. A chapter on The Great Gatsby for each of its 3 volumes. and a chapter on The Great Gatsby then, which in effect, say, defamiliarizes what otherwise is a hyper familiar literary work. For volume 1, on scapegoating rituals, then, Nick Carraway's curious use of the word Holocaust. Remember, the Holocaust was complete. He sees the corpse of George Wilson. Is the word Holocaust to describe Gatsby's murder leads us to consider the ways in which Gatsby's death, in effect, cleans up the mess created by Daisy and Tom Buchanan, according to Nick Carraway, and in effect restores order. Am I the only one who's ever talked about Gatsby who's pointed out that it's the three working class characters in the novel that get killed? It's really interesting. A novel which is about class distinctions, to be sure. Fitzgerald, whether intuitively, instinctively, or whatever, kills off the working class characters. So George and Myrtle Wilson, and Jake Gatsby, and spares the upper class ones, the class to which Nick Carraway belongs and to which Fitzgerald aspired. So restoring order, which is precisely the role that René Girard assigns to the scapegoat. For volume 2 on building rituals, and the disguised return or the uncanny return of these archaic building rituals within modernist works of literature. In volume 2, then, Gatsby's determination to fix everything in such a way as to take Daisy from Tom Buchanan passes into the novel itself, in which Fitzgerald freely takes, and with impunity, it's a catastrophe for Gatsby, but a strophe and antistrophe, as it were, for Fitzgerald. So Fitzgerald freely takes from the literary past, as Gatsby cannot take from his personal past. Fitzgerald freely takes from the literary past, among others, the poetry of John Keats, Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, don't tell me he doesn't, the story of Daedalus and Icarus from Ovid's Metamorphosis, and the story of Trimalchio, the Trimalchio episode then from Petronius's Satyricon, which Fitzgerald refers to specifically. He says Gatsby's, at one point, Gatsby's career as Trimalchio was all over, was finished, words to that effect. For volume 3, on the symmetrical ploy, the writing a work then in which the book ends by making bookends. For volume 3, the considerable as well as futile effort that Gatsby expends on his plot to reunite with Daisy serves as the stage on which Fitzgerald himself successfully enacts countless symmetrical ploys that achieve closure without any expenditure of effort. And I'll just leave you with kind of teasers, which I'll develop in the third and final chapter of Gatsby, which I'm working on now for the book on bypassing the plot, the third volume, to notice the way in which that green light that everyone remembers at the end of the doc, Gatsby's reaching out to it. It's the end of the Buchanan's doc. It's owned by Tom Buchanan, by the way. But anyway, returns, but in a very kind of covert, a very hidden way. At the very end of the novel, look it up, it's on the probably the very last page, returns as the green breast of the New World for the eyes of the Dutch sailors. It's kind of hidden there within a rather long paragraph, but it's there. And most intriguingly of all, I find it immensely intriguing, and I'll leave you with it, is the way in which, if you look up on your Kindle Reader, do a word search for the word laden, L-A-D-E-N. See, it turns up only twice. That's the European way of doing twice. It turns up only twice, as I learned while ordering a beer once, anyway, never mind, in Paris. That the word laden appears with the description of the corpse of Myrtle Wilson. Her body, her corpse is wrapped up. You don't see her. She's wrapped up, and it's laid on laden table. And that word reappears towards the end, what it was in chapter 8, where we don't see Gatsby, like we don't see Myrtle Wilson, we don't see Gatsby dead, we see the laden mattress. So that way that Fitzgerald has, the Igbo people have this proverb that I use, it's one of the epigraphs for volume 3, where one thing, it's the left hand, the right hand, where one thing is standing, something else will stand beside it. And that word, the green breast, the green light, the table that's laden, the mattress that's laden, those stage twins that Nick Carraway notices at Gatsby's party. Much to think about, I hope. Bye-bye.